Good morning, I'm Gail from Extinction Rebellion.
And I'm Lizzie, also from Extinction Rebellion.
And we wanted to talk to you about the principles and values behind Extinction Rebellion. Basically, if anybody agrees with these principles and values, then you're welcome to do things as Extinction Rebellion. You don't need our permission. There's a longer write-up of them on the website. You can find a document where you can get the longer write-up. And we just wanted to talk about them a bit more practically, about how we see them in practice. And so this is just our interpretation. We might get some things wrong. We might miss some things out. So this is not like the gospel according to us. This is just our interpretation. We'd really welcome feedback in the comments. And over time we'd look at that and see if they should be improved in how we've expressed them. However, if there's something about them you really don't like and you can't live with, then maybe Extinction Rebellion's not for you, and that's all cool. So the first thing is that we want to have a shared vision, but it's quite an open vision. We talk about our duty to create a world that's fit for the next 7 generations to live in, and that our hearts tell us that another world is possible. And we want to keep that vision of change really quite broad so that it can contain a variety of opinions, because what we think is that we need really good information, that we need power, and that we need a conversation. And so that's why one of our demands of Extinction Rebellion is to have a citizens' assembly. So we need to look at the issues that we're facing, I think, in a really broad way. How does our democracy fail us, our economy? How do we help society to be fair? It's not fair at the minute. What technologies should we work with? What's wrong with the legal system? And how do we have a really ecological principle to how we think about the world? How, seeing the world as in a relationship. And so that's all the conversation, isn't it? How that actually plays out. So we're not saying that we're this or we're that and having a load of solutions. What we're saying is we've got a vision of a better world, and that we want to have a conversation about how to achieve that. So the second principle is about setting our mission on what's necessary. We don't want to be like a kind of NGO where you say, okay, it'd be nice if we made this little change. We can see that the whole system's going to take us off a cliff, and so the whole system has to change. And what our understanding is that means that around 3.5% of the population has to rise up. That's from Erica Chenoweth's data. You can look her up on a TED talk. And that's about 2 million people in the UK. We think you already exist. We think you already know that things are really bad and they have to change. And so what we're really about is finding how we can enable power. We believe in the sort of social model of power, that power comes from people and from our consent, and it's time to remove our consent. So really we are about massive change, but something that we do together because it's needed. This is not about being one kind of, it's about conversation.
Yeah, so we're looking to build a regenerative culture, and what we mean by that is a culture that is resilient and adaptable and flexible and healthy. So we recognise that that there needs to be a sort of radical shift in the way that we relate, and that's not just the way that we relate to each other, but the way we relate to ourselves and the way we relate to the earth and where we live and our communities. And so what we're really encouraging people to do is bring a lot of awareness into the dynamics that might be going on for them, and to really look after each other and look after themselves. And this care, this compassion can happen on lots of levels. So there's self-care and self-compassion that often facilitates a deeper compassion and care for other people and for where you live, for the earth, for other species, for other forms of life. And I guess, of course, like, we all bring a lot into this work. It's demanding, and a lot of our shadows and our struggles will surface through engaging with what's going on. Frankly, with ecological collapse, with like rampant inequality, with all these converging crises, they hit us on quite a deep emotional level. And so I guess we're just really inviting people to bring a lot of awareness to the dynamics and the stuff that we might be bringing, and to sort of look up and think about things like rank and privilege, things like projections, projecting or drama triangles, and a lot of like very common but challenging ways of relating that tend to divide us and isolate us, and make it much harder to collaborate, I guess. So we openly challenge ourselves and this toxic system, and by that we recognise that the systems in which we operate at the moment as a species are toxic to the core. They have systems of oppression like coded into them, whether it's racism or sexism or ecological destruction.
Yeah, and in challenging ourselves, we know that civil disobedience is really important. That's what we've learnt from social science. And what we say is that we are above the ground. So if you want to be involved in Extinction Rebellion, what you do is open and public. So for example, if you put a mask on in the middle of the night and ran and smashed a window and ran off, that's up to you, that's not up to us to judge that. And but it wouldn't be Extinction Rebellion, because when we do acts of civil disobedience, we stay in full sight of the public and we take responsibility, and that obviously requires some element of personal sacrifice. People might risk arrest or getting charged or fined and so on, and we think that sacrifice speaks to people in terms of that willing to step forwards. We do recognise that civil disobedience and the risks it incurs is not for everybody for various reasons. People of colour are likely to get treated not as well in this system than white people, and also white activists have been treated badly as well on the front line. So we're not saying that the risks aren't real and that they're different for different people. And say, for example, if you've got an immigration status or a mental health issue, or children that are little that are relying on you, caring duties, it may not be that the civil disobedience part's for you. But what we do welcome is active participation by everybody. We hope that and believe that there's a role for everybody in this movement, and we'd really like to foreground people from diverse backgrounds in terms of spokespeople and so on. So it may be that those of us with privilege are doing more of the civil disobedience, and other people are stepping forwards to speak. Other people can be in the background supporting admin and so on. There's a place for everybody.
So we value reflecting and learning. We work in cycles of action, reflection, learning, action, reflection, learning, and we fully acknowledge that we're not going to get it totally right, probably ever, but that if we keep sort of trying things out and learning from what goes well and what where we fall short, then we can keep improving.
So building from that previous comment, we welcome everyone and every part of everyone, and we bring all sorts of different things. I sometimes call it the don't be a dick rule, and know that I am a dick sometimes, apologies, and hope that when we get it wrong that people are quite gracious in explaining that we've got it wrong, and that we're compassionate about it so we can all learn. And within that, we talk about being more of an educational space, I guess, than a safer space. When we think about it, we really want people from all sorts of backgrounds, class, race, gender, and disability and so on, to be part of this movement. And we know that oppressions run, power and privilege runs, and people get things wrong, and it needs to be discussed. We ask people not to call people out online. and in meetings. We think it's much better to do short feedback loops where you talk to people out of the space. And of course, if somebody was really behaving appallingly, then that would need stopping. So there's some subtleties there. So I guess what we're really trying to do is increase our group self-awareness, and some of us will know more about one thing than another, and let's try and educate each other, and let's be kind about it as best we can. That doesn't mean people don't get angry when they get treated badly. We understand that, and hopefully part of the regen culture also is having opportunities to take things to a side and express feelings in a held way. And all that said, we're not a therapeutic movement. Our focus isn't on ending any one particular oppression. We are focused on system change and trying to build a social movement. So we're going to get things wrong, but we intend to keep learning as a group.
So we actively mitigate for power, meaning that we're looking to sort of decentralise power as much as possible. And we're looking to empower people to take action without necessarily asking for permission first. But we recognise that like any movement, this is built on relationships. Relationships are difficult, as I mentioned before, so we do have a conflict resolution process in place. And we do invite people to bring as much awareness into the power dynamics that might be there, the rank dynamics that might be there, and it's just sort of in practical terms, what we look to do is to weight coordinating roles towards more marginalised groups, and then our media and messaging includes issues and voices that are normally ignored. So, for example, making the link between climate change and immigration detention centres would be an example of that. However, we're not looking to speak on other people's behalf. We're not looking to silence anyone or. And then so accessibility is really important. Thinking about childcare or wheelchair access, or thinking about the language that we might use, and whether it comes across as jargon or and even like the way we do meetings or actions, just taking into consideration how accessible they are. And we recognise that oppressive behaviours are socially embedded within us, and privileged people are asked to commit to questioning their privilege and to be open to being challenged. We're inviting people to look into why certain people have more privilege, and to take accountability for that privilege, to see where that privilege has come at the expense of others,
So that's not about there's this group that's going to sort everything out. This is about a culture that we're trying to embed and develop, and obviously that if we're not messaging something strongly enough, then it'll need improving. We hope with Extinction Rebellion we've started to open up a space. It does feel like a movement that's growing. There's a lot of interest. It's gone quite exponential, and if you're interested in what we're doing and you're from a group that tends to get underrepresented and you'd like to be foregrounded and have your group and your voice put forward, be in touch with us. We'd really love to hear from you. We are obviously having those conversations with different people. So, and also when we started this thing, it's what some people call a dictatorship of the most willing. Some of us have put in enormous amounts of time to try and figure out how to do this and how to get it going. That means that there's some concentrated power at the minute in terms of decision making. We're in a conversation with a lot of people who think about systems and decentralisation, about how we can change how we organise so that power gets decentralised, essentially. We're looking at mandates and role descriptions and all sorts of possibilities, but it'll take some time to come. So in the meantime, we need to improve what we're doing. We have an open invite to people to join the coordination team if you're really super into what we're doing and you're part of an underrepresented group.
So we avoid blaming and shaming. We recognise that no one individual is, or not even like one specific group, is entirely responsible for the crises that we that are upon us, and we appreciate that we've all been in some way or another quite carefully conditioned into the system, and that it works through us and plays out through us in lots of different ways, and I guess that with that in mind, we tried to bring as much compassion into our work as possible, and recognise that it's systems that are the problem, it's power structures that are the problem, not particular individuals. And institutions that are the problem too.
And so I guess part of what we really recognise is that we've got the power if we make connections between us and if we're willing to step forwards and say no, and in that way civil disobedience can be quite an initiation into the no to this toxic system. And that takes our own personal courage and our own connection, and that's what we're really asking people to bring, to help build the connections between us. And I think to me it's like a reweaving of our family, and I feel really moved by that at times. And sometimes if you go all out for saying, oh, it's the powers in the corporations or in the media or the government, and of course they're not helping, we obviously recognise structural issues and things like structural racism and so on. But if that's our analysis, that they have the power, then what are we saying about ourselves? So there's a social model of power that says we have the power, and so for me it's about stepping into our courage, and that's why we think blaming and shaming doesn't particularly help. It's bound to happen at times. We're all cross with things that are going off in this system.
So we're a non-violent network, and non-violent discipline is really key to everything that we're doing. There's something incredibly powerful about peaceful protest, and some people practice non-violence, coming from like a spiritual or from it's part of their values, but we also are non-violent because strategically it's crucial for our movement.
And so for some people in this movement, they may be pacifists and have a really strong moral sense of non-violence, and that's really welcome. And other people may be okay with violence that's happening elsewhere, and we're not seeking to condemn that, and understanding that people live in all sorts of other situations. We're very fortunate in the UK at the minute, at least, that when you're activists, that you don't tend to get killed, as happens in other countries and so on. So we're not critiquing, we're not here to do a non-violent critique. That's a debate that goes on, and people are really welcome to have it. But our position is, if you're part of Extinction Rebellion, that there's non-violence. Just to clarify, we don't see minor property damage as violence if it's done in a way that's not going to injure anyone or put people at risk. So graffiti or cracking windows, that kind of thing, is part of what might happen in the future. So massive property damage is probably something that people wouldn't be able to afford the fines for and things like that. But whatever you do, you have to take responsibility for it. So it's not us that did it, or somebody else in the movement that did it. If whatever you do, then you're responsible for it.
So as has already been mentioned, we're based on autonomy and decentralisation. So we've now gone through the principles and values, and